It is now my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for this evening. Charlie Nelms attended a historically black college near where he grew up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. His enrollment as a graduate student at the Indiana University School of Education led to a doctorate and a life as a groundbreaking educator and leader. He served as the CEO of 2 campuses in Indiana and Michigan before becoming IU's first Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Multicultural Affairs. After founding and organizing this new office, and several years of successfully increasing both the diversity of the campus and the general awareness of the importance of diversity the general awareness of diversity, Dr. Helms is spending his so-called retirement now consulting, writing, and as a senior scholar at the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, providing leadership and assisting minority-serving institutions. His many awards include the Martin Luther King Drum Major for Service Award, presented by President Obama. Charlie is renowned as a writer and a speaker on higher education, and we are delighted to have him here close out our formal programming this weekend. Charlie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. In my dream, the angel looked at me and shrugged and said, if we fail this time, it will be a failure of imagination. And then she placed the world gently in my hand. If we fail this time, it will be a failure of imagination. And then she placed the world gently in my hand. Good evening.
Good evening.
Talk to me. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm not just talking to myself. I'm talking to you. I'm Charlie Nelms, and I'm a baby boomer. 77 million of us born between 1946 and 1964. I was born September 11th, 1946, on a farm in the Delta region of Arkansas, one of the poorest, most racially segregated regions anywhere in America, where everything you did from the time you were born until the time you died was defined by your race. And it was all legal. It was all legal. I didn't grow up in a town. I grew up on a farm near Crawfordsville, Arkansas, on the Buck Lake Road. I'm from a family of 11 children. Neither of my parents graduated from high school. They didn't even graduate from middle school. But they were the smartest, wisest people I've ever met in my life as I have traversed the world. Mama and Papa. They had 11 children. I didn't say 2, I said 11 children. I'm from a family of 11 children, and I'm number 5 in the order. Mama and Papa understood 3 things very well. That's why they were so wise. 1, they understood the importance of voting. 2, they understood the importance of owning land. And 3, they understood the importance of education. Those 3 things they understood well, and they bequeathed those things to my siblings and me. I've never missed voting in an election in my life. Whether it's midterm, whether it's a local school board election, whether it's county commissioners, whether it's state legislature, legislative election, I've never missed voting. And I refuse to miss voting because I do not wish to denigrate the memory of my parents. That 40-acre farm they had, they mortgaged it many times over in order to make sure that my siblings and I could go to college. 9 of my 11, 9 of us proceeded to some form of post-secondary education. I'm pleased to report that we still have the 40-acre farm. And as long as I'm alive, no one else will ever own the farm because I refuse to let the plantation owners on either side of us, I refuse to let their offsprings have the land. We got electricity in my house when I was a junior in college. And the reason we didn't get electricity is because these plantation owners wanted to buy the 40 acres, and my parents would not sell it. Before the days of the civil rights movement and all of that, a utility company could not place a pole on your property without your permission. And so it was not until one of those people died and went to hell or wherever bad people go did the nephew who took over the farm permit the Arkansas Power and Light Company to place a utility pole on the land. And thus we got electricity. I would note that is the third generation of that family now that's renting our little 40 acres of land. Not buying it, they're renting it. Still have my grandmother's 80 acres of land. They don't make any more land. There's an election coming up any day now, right around the corner. Do not denigrate the memory, the legacy of people who made it possible for you to say yes to this invitation to come to Indiana University for these past several days. Don't denigrate their legacy by refusing to vote. Vote your conscience, vote your interest, but vote. That's the first lesson I want you to remember. If you don't remember anything else I say this evening, you remember that. I attended a Rosenwald school. Don't Google it now, but when you go home, Google Julius Rosenwald. He was the former president and CEO of Sears, Roebuck and Company. Black folk could not go to school in the area where I grew up, so Mr. Rosenwald started these little 1- and 2-room schools throughout the southern deep South, making it possible for us to be able to go to school. I never attended school 9 consecutive months in my life because we had a split session, meaning that we planted the cotton, we chopped the cotton in the spring, we planted in the spring, chopped in the summer, laid the crop by, meaning it was too large for you to chop the cotton or weed it. And then we went to school for 1 month during the month of August, and then when the cotton opened, we had to leave school to go off and pick cotton. So my last summer of picking cotton was September 11th, 1964. I picked 468 pounds of cotton. If I picked 468 pounds of cotton and they paid me $3.50 per 100, how much money did I make? I want you to do the math when you leave. 468, $3.50 per 100 pound. How much did I earn? Don't try to figure it out, just hold that for a moment. Arkansas. So when I went off to college, I didn't have a choice but to go to a historically black college. Philander Smith College in Little Rock, Arkansas Baptist College, and Arkansas Agricultural, Mechanical, and Normal College, founded for the education of Negroes, which is now called the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, which is an 1890 land grant institution. I'm going someplace with a story, so stay with me for a moment. The southern states had a rule, a law, where you could not attend a graduate school or an undergraduate school in the South. They literally had a law where they paid for you to go away to earn your graduate degree. Indiana University was one of those places that permitted us to come and study and earn master's and doctoral degrees. Indiana, Michigan, Columbia, Iowa State, Cornell, NYU. Those were among the schools. So if you meet an African-American man or woman with a doctorate degree, whether it's an EDD or PhD, more than likely it's going to be from a northern, predominantly white university. So this whole foray into diversity is not something new at Indiana University. If you go back and review that history, you will understand that there was a man by the name of Herman B. Wells, who was the president of Indiana University for many years and was a national leader. So I ended up coming to Indiana University 44 years ago to work on a master's degree and later completed a doctorate at Indiana University and had the support of some wonderful people. That is about as close as I'll come to making a commercial. But I'm speaking to you from experience, not from hearsay, not from some article, not from me. I'm speaking from experience. And so as you consider where you're going to pursue your graduate studies, your professional studies, I would strongly encourage you to consider Indiana University, my alma mater, twice, because it has a record of helping people to succeed. So, as a baby boomer, I want to talk with you about changing the world. I'm 68 years old. I turned 68 September 11th. And I believed when I was 18 that I could change the world, and I still believe I can change the world. I believe you can change the world. I believe that my son can change the world, and he is changing the world. Malala, the young woman who won the Nobel Peace Prize the other week at age 17, she's changing the world. And you can change the world. How many of you believe you can change the world? How many of you want to change the world? Raise your hand high. Don't be embarrassed. Raise your hand. It's okay. Because if you don't change it, it's going to self-destruct. So, what I want to do, not going to talk at you. I want to talk with you for a few minutes. And then what I want to do, I want to open it up and I want to try to have a little dialogue with you. So you can ask me whatever you want to ask me or whatever. Someone asked me, what do you do? Well, I tweet, I blog. Okay, I write a couple of blogs, I tweet, and I do lots of stuff, okay? So I renew myself every day. So what we're going to do here is to talk about what you have to do. First of all, if you're going to change the world, you have to dream big. Now, the problem with so many people, they don't dream big enough. They get a little teeny-weeny piddly dream. That's what my mother would say, piddly dream. So if you're going to dream, get yourself a big dream, a big one. What if Martin Luther King had said, I just want to make sure we're not sitting on the back of this bus in Montgomery? What if Mother Teresa had said, I just want to open up an orphanage? What if Nelson Mandela had said, I just want to make sure that my family is better off? What if Sandra Day O'Connor had said, I'm okay with being a member of the circuit court? She never would have been appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. So the point is, get yourself a big dream. If you're going to dream, get a big one. It doesn't cost you anything. The second point I want you to remember is this. The only thing larger than your dream should be your imagination. And if your dream is smaller than your imagination, go back to sleep. Go back to sleep and wake up when your dream is large enough. Get yourself a big dream. Say that with me. Get myself a big dream. I'm going to get myself a big dream. 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 A great big old dream. Now, y'all, this is not a speech. I believe all of this stuff. I believe this stuff. At 18 years old, I decided I wanted to be a college president. 18. Coming off of that subsistence farm, my mother and father told all of their children, they said, you can be anything you want to be. Now, I didn't know what anything meant. I just knew what I wanted to be. And I met these people at this little historically black college who mentored me before mentoring was even invented as a word or as a concept. And so when I told the president that I wanted to be a college president, because I just knew I knew how to run the place better than those eggheads in the administration building. I just knew it. So I thought. He looked at me and he said, boy, you can do it. He didn't say you can't do it. He didn't say you shouldn't do it. He said you can do it at 18. And I set my sights on becoming president of a historically black college. But that's not what happened. I became chancellor of two predominantly the white universities, where there were only 5 African American people working at one of them, and I was the chancellor. Now, this story really isn't about look at me now. No, that's not the story. My message, the moral of my story is simply this: you can be anything you wish to be. All you have to do is to determine what that is and then follow these next steps. Who's going to push this for me? Will you advance it for me? Yeah. Now, y'all see, I'm a baby boomer. In case if the technology didn't work, I brought some posters. I brought me some posters in case if the technology didn't work. Second thing you got to do, once you get the big dream, you have to understand the challenges. And the understanding of which I'm speaking will not just occur to you overnight. You need to engage in some formal study and reflection to understand what the research says and what the practice is. You have to understand that piece. You understand what I'm saying? Your emotions will only get you so far. The dean, when he was talking about these miles per gallon, he couldn't say, I feel. I doubt if he said he felt anything. He probably talked about the research. He talked about the advantages. He talked about the gains. He talked about all of that. He talked about the return on investment. He talked about all of those things. So you have to understand the challenges. And you have to understand that there is more gray than there is black or white. That's what I've discovered. I used to think I had the answers. I have some ideas based on the research and the practice and the policies. But they're always better answers. Do not rely on the talking heads on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC. Do not, the R's and the D's and the I's, those are the Republicans, the Democrats, and Independents. I don't care who they are. Don't rely on those people for your sole source of information. Don't think because you found something online that that's the real deal. One of the things you have to do is to be able to discern. You have to develop this whole notion of discernment. Now, here's how Alan Toffler said it. He said that the educated person of the future is one who is capable of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Learning, unlearning, and relearning. The life shelf of knowledge. The life shelf of knowledge is nearly as long as you think it is. I used to know what it was, Dean Graham. What is it? You know the life shelf of knowledge? I don't either. But it's short. And so what you have to do is to learn how to learn, and you have to devote yourself to learning over the course of a lifetime. You're not just going to have one job or 2 jobs or 1 career or 2 careers. The prediction is that you're going to have multiple careers, not jobs, but multiple careers. And the only way you can be prepared for that is you have to develop your ability to think critically and analytically, the ability to express yourself orally and in writing, and the capacity to work with other people whose perspectives may be different from your own. I have one child, a son, 35 years old, a law degree, works for the United Nations. Everyone in his work group is from someplace else other than, you're not going to compete with Purdue. You're not going to compete with Michigan or Michigan State or Harvard or Yale or MIT. You're going to be competing with people from around the world who live in towns and villages and hamlets whose name you can't even pronounce nor find on the globe. So, if you're going to compete, you have to learn how to think critically, analytically, to express yourself, and to work with people whose culture, whose religion, whose gender orientation, and so on and so forth may be complete opposite of yours. And you may have a degree and still not be educated. Don't confuse having a degree with being educated. Education is more than a collection of courses. I know a lot of uneducated, degreed people. I know, and I won't start naming them. I know a lot of them. Advance that for me, brother. Employee assets. Now, you have a lot more assets than you think you have. Stop running around here worrying about what you don't have. Despite this little education that my parents had, they had some wonderful assets. And one was just something as basic as courage and a belief that things could be better and that they could make them better, not only for their children, but for their neighbors and for their church members and so on and so forth. My father was a community organizer long before community organizing developed into what it is today, long before that. He used to slip around at night and register black farmers and sharecroppers to vote. Those were the days when they had a poll tax. Google poll tax when you go home. Poll tax. Literacy test. How many of you can tell me how many bubbles in a bar of Ivory soap? How many of you can tell me how many bubbles there are in a bar of lye soap? You don't even know what lye soap is, do you? Google lye soap. And I don't mean L-I-E. L-Y-E, lye soap. Homemade soap. You have assets. Deploy all of your assets. You're part of a network. That's an asset. Equip yourself. We've already talked about understanding the issues. So go on off to school. Hope you come to IU, but if you don't, go someplace and get yourself an MPA, an MBA, a PhD, a JD. Don't settle for average. Commit yourselves to excellence. And I'm not just using excellence as a word either. You need to really, really equip yourself. Equip yourself. There ought to be something about you that will give you a competitive advantage. And that may mean knowing something that another person may not know. It may mean being able to do something. It may mean having a degree. It may mean being a researcher in a particular area and so on and so forth. But you really, really do need to equip yourself. Now, I want to come back to this part about this degree business. This degree business. It's not enough just to have a degree and to know something, but you also have to have passion and compassion. And if you don't have the passion and the compassion, I don't care how much you know or how many degrees you have, you're not going to be an agent of change. You're going to be a protector of the status quo. And your degree should not prepare you to protect the status quo. If that's all you're going to do, don't go to school. I'm serious about this. Don't go to school if all you're going to do is to protect the status quo. There are enough people doing that. There's so many people who are in leadership positions, but they're presiding. There's a difference between presiding and leading. But you see, you can't lead unless you know the way. And you can't know the way unless you're prepared, unless you're equipped. And yes, the ability to think, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you need to equip yourself. Be equipped. Don't come here with me talking about I feel. I heard, I believe. Do I need to say anything about this one? Look here. Don't wait for the commission to be formed or the committee to be formed. Be the committee. You be the committee of one. I coined this phrase years ago, and I know all the grammarians here would say it's wrong. I don't care if you think it's wrong. We are they. Stop waiting for them and they. We are the people we have been waiting for. There was a great writer, what's her name, said that. Who said that? We're the people we've been waiting for. Google that when you get home. Don't wait for a committee. And don't get yourself hung up on the consensus of the committee. Because if you do that, you're probably not going to take many chances at all. Because a committee will not agree with you, condone what it is, your perspective. So hold fast to your position if you can defend it. And you ought to be able to defend it. You ought to be able to articulate the rationale. You ought to be able to bring something to bear to undergird and support your position other than saying, I feel. Be the committee. Gandhi said it this way, we must be the change we wish to see in the world. We must be the change we wish to see in the world. He didn't say, they must be the change we wish to see in the world. He said, we must be the change we wish to see in the world. So what change do you wish to see? Do you want to see a more environmentally just world? Do you want to see one that is more economically supportive of people? I mean, what do you want? And once you decide, you know, tonight, over 100 million people will go to bed hungry. We will throw away enough food in this room tonight to feed many, many, many people. So do you want to feed the world's hungry? Join the Zero Hunger Project. You ever heard of the United Nations World Food Program? You ever heard of Oxfam? You ever heard of these various organizations? You go start your own. You don't have to go all the way to the Ivory Coast to feed hungry people. They're right here in your neighborhood. They're in your neighborhood. You pass by them every day. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Don't wait for the committee. And I have an analogy that I want to use when I say don't confuse movement with progress. We used to go to the woods. We had wood-burning stoves. I mean, you know, we baked the bread, wood. You know, we put the cabbage and the butter beans and everything. They cooked all day on the stove. Everything was wood-based. We'd go to the woods to cut the wood. A cross-cut saw. Google cross-cut saw when you get home. Cross-cut saw. One person is one end, you're pulling that saw back and forth, you're cutting up the firewood, the stove wood. Okay? We loaded it on the truck, and Michael, the truck would get stuck in some of those ruts in the road. And the tires would just be spinning, but the truck wouldn't be moving. The tires would just spin and spin and spin, and we'd have to get out and push the truck to get it unstuck. I discovered then as a little boy that all movement is not progress. And a lot of people confuse movement with progress. And all they're doing is moving the chairs around on the deck. They're coming up with a new name for something. They're coming up with a new process, a new approach, a new policy, but nothing substantially has changed. So all movement is not progress. All movement is not progress. You got that? And if you want to change the world, you have to understand when real progress is being made, as opposed to someone running a game on you. I'm going to use a concrete example in here, and it's called diversity. We've been talking about diversity in this country for years. We've been talking about diversity for a long time. When are we going to really achieve the objectives we say we have for diversity? When are we really going to achieve the objectives we say we have for equity? But don't confuse equity with diversity. They're both important, but don't think that just because you have a more diverse university or a society or a neighborhood that you have a more equitable one. You got that? I sound like a Baptist preacher, don't I? And I don't even go to a Baptist church. I don't believe in violence of any form. I do not believe in violence of any form. So just reject violence. And not all violence is necessarily beating someone across the head or shooting them or cutting them. There's a spiritual dimension to violence as well. There's a personal dimension to violence. There are multi-dimensional aspects to violence, this whole notion of violence. And so all I want to say is, and you all have been in session all week, thank goodness you're not old enough to be drinking wine, so you should be awake. But at any rate, embrace nonviolence. Don't buy into violence. Don't become a co-conspirator. Don't enhance it. Don't enable it. Speak out against it. Yeah. Persistence. I told my friend I was going to say something about a scripture, and she said, well, do you have anything from other non-Christian? I said, no. So I said, I'm not going to use that. There was a blind man in Washington, D.C., who was a photographer, and he would sit near the exit from the metro. I call it the metro. And he would take photographs, and he would charge people $5. And people would try to trick him. They would say they gave him a $20 bill when in fact they'd given him a $10 bill, and so on and so forth. So some people took advantage of him. And I heard this story on National Public Radio. And he said to the reporter, even though people try to cheat you, you have to have stickability. You got to stay with it. You have to persist. I used to be a marathon runner. Ran the Chicago Marathon 4 times. I ran 10 miles this morning. Okay? Ran the Chicago Marathon 4 times. But one thing about running, you can only run a race, whether it's a sprint or a marathon, one step at a time. You don't run it in yards, you don't run it in half miles, you run it one step at a time. And there is really something called that when you get to that 20-mile mark, 18, 19, 20, when you just think you're going to die, it's impossible to make it on to the end of the run. When you're running on nothing but what Kipling calls nerve, heart, and sinew, but you just have to keep running and you just sort of keep picking it up and putting them down, that's persistence, y'all. And if you turn around every time someone sprays some water on you or put a sick dog on you, see, you know what sicking a dog on somebody means? Ah, okay. If you turn around every time, you will not reach your destination. You have to stay with it. So when you're taking statistics and you think you just can't get it, stick with it. I know some people say, I'm going to pray. Well, that's good. But the best thing to do is to pray as though everything depended on some superior being and work as though everything depended on you. And when you get the confluence between your faith system and your work ethic, you're going to get an A or a B. You're going to do a lot better than a C or a D. That's called persistence. When you don't think you can edit that paper not a single other time, and you think the faculty member is picking on you, being unreasonable, edit the paper one more time. Instead of settling for the C or D or B, try to get the A. Persist. Persist. Philanthropy. Someone said that we make a living by what we earn, and we make a life by what we give. Don't worry about Bill Gates. Don't worry about anyone else's philanthropy. Worry about your own. And philanthropy isn't all about money. It's sharing something of value with other people in proportion to your capacity to do so. So if you establish a book award or a certificate for a grade school child, if that's consistent with your capacity, you are just as much as a philanthropist as the Grahams are, who may have endowed a professorship. Or Bill and Melinda Gates, who may have, or Warren Buffett, who may have, or just a GlaxoSmithKline, who may have done a particular thing. you are just as much of a philanthropist. Philanthropy is about investing in relationship to your capacity. Philanthropy is not donating. Philanthropy is about investing. Investing in the world you want to see, investing in the community that you want to see, investing in the neighborhood, the church, the school that you want to see. Embrace philanthropy. And you got to celebrate. There's so much going on that you can have a major heart attack, asthma, arthritis, all of it combined. Celebrate your successes. The little things that bring you joy or may bring joy to someone else, that may make a difference in someone's life. Celebrate. Find a time to celebrate every day. Don't wait until you get to the end of your career until you're going to celebrate. You may have a heart attack. And you know what? You may lose your job. They'll pack up your stuff in a box. They'll call your family and say, where would you like for us to deliver this should you die? I'm serious about this thing. Celebrate every day. Celebrate every day. Find something to celebrate every day. All you have to do is open your eyes. All you have to do is to see what's happening around you. So how do you renew yourself? Invest and celebrate. Well, this may not be what you wanted, but this is what I have to offer. Memorize some poetry for your soul. So I'm going to leave you with a Langston Hughes piece. Langston Hughes. How many of you know heard the name Langston Hughes? Google him if you don't know him. Yeah, he got mixed up. But at any rate, Langston Hughes said it this way. Hold fast to dreams. For when dreams die, life is like a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams. Because when dreams go, life is like a barren field frozen with snow. You can change the world. All you have to do is to decide and get started. You don't have to wait until you graduate. You can start tonight. And you start by changing yourself and the perspectives that you have about yourself and the world and the people around you. Thank you so much, and I hope you come to IU.